Okay, today we will be looking at creating an AppleScript Objective-C application within Xcode with some realistic looking dialog options. You know, when you're developing apps for macOS, you want to make sure that your users actually are going through the workflow and it's not something that's totally unexpected when they see that. So I'll go ahead and run through what it's actually going to look like right now. So we have menu test. Notice how it automatically filled my username. And then you can fill in the password. Looks just like a native OS X dialog box. So we're going to go ahead and make that today. So first of all, you'll need to have Xcode, and hopefully you have that installed already. And I'll go ahead and create a brand new project. So File, New Project. If you don't have Xcode installed already, you need to make sure you either grab it from the App Store, or as an alternative, you can download the beta without having to log into your Apple ID account. If you're just messing around, that's a pretty good option as well. But today we're going to go to macOS and then choose AppleScript App. And you can create the product name to be whatever you want it to be. If you do have your Apple ID, it'll be pre-filled with your team info, so it can download the certificates for the notarization and signing, but that's beyond the scope of this video. So go ahead and give it a name. You don't need to do a Git repository. If you want to do version control, you can, but it's totally optional at this point. But today, so you can see here, just creating a brand new project gives you some information about these different files. So we have the AppleScript file, we have the assets file, which include things like icons, you have the main menu file, the plist file, and some Objective-C headers. So first off, we're going to start by just defining what that menu is going to look like and taking a look at these windows. So we'll go ahead and clean up our workspace here so you can see what I'm doing. We have a totally blank window, and if we hover over it, it says the window. So in order to build an interface here, what we're going to do, I'm going to start by resizing it to make it look more like a native window alert box, right? We don't want anything that's too big or too small, but you have kind of a rectangular thing, and we could always edit this later. So to drag and drop elements onto this interface builder, you don't actually need to write any code. You can just say View, Show Library. And if you go under this first button right here, there's all these elements that we can click and drag. So we'll drag a button onto here, and so that'll be the button for our install software. And we'll do the same thing again with this push button, and this will be our cancel button. Okay, so to edit the text, you can just double click into that. Pretty easy, and the button will automatically align. And in the interface builder, there are those nice little rails that help you make sure that your elements are aligned. So again, before we do any code, we're just going to kind of define this interface and figure out exactly what we want and where. So the next thing that we're going to need some text boxes. So we'll go to the Show Library, and you can search for text, and it would be the text field. And so that will be what we have for the username. And then we'll do the same thing again, and we want a password field. Now the password field is going to have the information that you type blurred out or asterisked out, and so that's called a secure text field. So a little bit different, but functionally it looks the same. The only difference is when you type in it, you'll see it blocked out. Alright, so now for some labels. So it is called a label, so we'll go ahead and do a label, and we'll call this username, and then we'll do another label for the password field. So I found this to be pretty easy. It's a little more unwieldy when you have to do it with AppleScript, and we'll go over that in a little bit, but for now, this looks pretty good. So actually, I need a little bit more space here. I want to put some content right up here with the image and maybe some placeholder text. So I messed up a little bit, but that's okay, because we could always resize it later. So we'll go ahead, do something like this. And that looks a little better. So we're going to include like a title label. So we'll do a label again. but this time I'll say this program wants to install software, right? Very similar to what you would get in the native OS X. As you recall, it'll say such and such a program wants to install software, please enter your password to continue, or whatever message you're trying to emulate here. And so we'll bring this little sidebar back, and if you click on this icon, you can see that now we can edit the fonts. So this font is normally going to be the system regular, so you can use whatever the default font is, and we'll use bold. Okay, and as you recall, this looks pretty good. You could also choose different things here rather than system bold regular. You can choose heavy, for example, or any other options that you wanted, right? You can change some menu options. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can do in here. But anyways, we'll go back to bold. Okay, so this program wants to install software. Keep it something like this. And then if you remember, there's a little text underneath it, and that text is basically telling you to enter your password. Enter your password to continue. Okay, you can change this text to be whatever you want. We're just using this as an example. In this particular time, we're going to be doing the font, which would be the small font. Okay, and so that looks pretty close. I'm not exactly referencing it 100% for what the dialog is, but I think you can get the idea if you want to make something that looked exactly what you were expecting. And so now we need to add an image, right? We'd like to have maybe a little icon right here, something like that. So I'm going to scoot this over just a little bit more, like so. Okay, just want to make sure I had enough room here. And then we'll bring our file browser back. You can right click here and say add files to the project. And so this is where you're going to choose your video. I have a lot of stuff downloaded already, right? You can download these icon files from within OS X if you wanted, or you can download those from an icon source. So just go ahead and click and add it, and now you can see our alert icon is now in the project. And so that makes it really easy. We'll use the library picker again, showing the library. Click on the images now, and now automatically you can see that it automatically loaded this alert icon. And now we could insert that as a regular image. Now this could be whatever you want, right? This could be your company logo, but here I'm just mocking up what the actual icon looks like. So something like this. All right, looks good to me. Very good. So yeah, it looks good. We're gonna have to shrink it up a little bit. So we'll go ahead and make this window smaller, something like that. Yeah. So you can play around with this. This one is acting a little strange, but that should be good. Let's try now. Because I want to get this without all this other gray space here. There we go. That looks great. Alright, very good. So you'll have to play around with it a little bit, and I'll check my alignment. It looks pretty good. Good enough for a demonstration. Okay, so now we want to get our buttons to actually do stuff. So go ahead and close this panel, and we'll go to this panel over here. So if you click on this button, you can see there's a whole bunch of properties it has, and you can change the size and the font and the text like we did. But one of the things we want to do is that install software button, that should be blue, right? It should be something that when we press on it, we have that blue, and it's like the default key. So one of the things you need to do is go to key equivalent and then press return, and boom, it turns blue, right? That's the default option, and that's what the user is expecting, so we're good to go. Okay, so the second thing we need to do is now we need to start adding some functionality to some of these buttons, right? So we have cancel and install software. So the way that you do this in Xcode is you hold Control and you drag to do some of these connection things, right? So you'll click on from the cancel button to the received actions icon, and you can see there's some actions right here. You could also do that in reverse from the delegate to the button, okay? And you can see that it has outlets, the window, things like that. And that's going to come in handy in just a little bit, but that's the main way that you're going to connect things, is control and click into that. So for the cancel button's simple, right? What action do we want the cancel button to take? We want this to terminate. And so we can control click the cancel button and drag it to this first responder box. Kind of looks like a little portal cube. And now we have all these actions that we can choose. So the action that we want this to choose, if we want to cancel, in Xcode parlance, that would be terminate, right? So right now, you can see if we go to the Connections tab, we are going to terminate when we press the cancel button, which is exactly what we want, and so we're good to go. Now, for the rest of this stuff, for the install software functionality, we need to start writing a little bit of code. So this is AppleScript. If you've worked with AppleScript before, it's pretty straightforward. A little bit weird at first, but not too different. But you can see that the placeholder content has these properties, right? So we have property the window, and then we initialize it with missing value. Recall that this is called the window. So in order for us to make some properties we can now interact with through that click and drag method, we're going to call it property user text field, and then we'll initialize it with an empty value here. Okay, and we'll do the same thing for the password field. So I'll say property, and again, these aren't keywords, these are variable names that you can define whatever you want this to be. So we'll call this user pass field missing value. All right, and so now that we have that in there, we just unlock some pretty cool stuff. So recall that we were clicking and dragging, so if we can control click and drag from here to here, now we can define this as that field, right? We want to call this one the user pass field, and then we'll control click on the delegate button again, go to the secure text field, and we'll call that the user pass field. And to double check to make sure you've done it okay, you can click on that button again, and you can see that the referencing outlet, user pass field, and then this one in particular, this should be the user text field. Okay. User pass, user text. All right, very good. So, with that information, now we need to define this button to actually do something, right? We have this button, and right now we don't have any functions for it. So the way that you do that in AppleScript is, after this, you're going to define your own function. So we'll call it on install button click. Again, this is not a keyword, this is the name of our function. And then we say end install button click. All right, and so now once we do that, you can see that, again, this will automatically have some interesting things for us to do, right? So we control click, drag and dropped from the button, and now we have this function available to receive that action. And so basically that means once we click that button, we're going to invoke this particular function. So once we have this function, let's go ahead and just display an alert. So we'll say hello. To concatenate strings, you use the AND in AppleScript. And we'll say string value of user text field. So what this will do, this will make an alert with very similar to JavaScript alert if you're familiar, but it'll just say hello and then whatever the username that I type in is. Okay? Now we can store all that stuff as a variable and edit that later, but that's beyond the scope of this. But let's check it out. We should have everything ready to go. So when you're ready, just go ahead and hit the play button. Okay, and so this program wants to install software. Enter your password, continue. Enter a username and a password, click that button, and it says hello. And so we'll go ahead and see cancel to make sure that it exits okay. Boom. We are ready to go. And so with that, you made your first application. Now you might be wondering, how do we actually distribute this to get this to work? It's very simple. You go to Product, Archive, and it'll build. And you can say Distribute App, Copy App, and then give it a name or location. We can put this on the desktop. And so now, when we archive that, so we'll go through, you can see we call this video. That's all of our assets. But here, now we have this application that you can click and distribute as a .app file, and it will run and do exactly what we want. Hope that was helpful. Talk to you soon.